Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Today's Mozart's birthday.
And I'm Cathleen. I'm a priest over at San Francisco Zen Center, which is the big red brick building on the corner of Page and Laguna. And I've been practicing there for some 22 years. It seems like a long time when you say it, but actually it was like that from there to here. And I was here last year in the spring, and I'm very happy to come back again. I thought a lot about what I would say today. How many of you are just starting out in practice? A few of you are. Okay. Well, that's okay, because I am too. And how many of you have been doing it for 2 or more years? Working? Oh, so quite a few. Okay. Well, I thought a lot about what I would say, and I thought what I'd like to talk about is what's the practice that's easily done in the midst of this world of distractions that you can, that I think about as a portable practice and one that you can apply in any circumstances without resorting to books or memory or anything else other than just a very basic thing. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. If I'm not speaking loudly enough, please raise your hand to let me know, because I know my voice tends to drop. So
is this heating?
Probably it may interfere just a bit if it's or okay, let's see. Often what we see and hear and read as lay practitioners is derived from a monastic tradition. You might be surprised to hear me include myself as a lay practitioner, but in fact, I'm not in the monastery. I'm in the world. And more ordinations in the world simply mean more intention to pay attention and a willingness to share this work with others by example and also in words. I don't see what I wear, who I am, as some dividing line between lay and priest. I see we all do this thing because something in us calls us and we love it. And in that we're all one. So I don't sit before you as an exemplar of what you think you might all like to be, but simply another person who's on the path just like you. No separation. In the larger Buddhist world, the one out there, and in fact, the world has more Buddhists than anything else. More Buddhists than Christians, more Buddhists than Islam, more Buddhists than Judaism, more Buddhists than practically It is the major world religion. And it's kind of hard to think about that in the United States because we tend so much to think about the Western Christian world. But there are an awful lot of people out there, and there's 7 billion people on the planet Earth who are Buddhist. An awful lot. They practice in various different ways, but lots of them. And maybe 15 to 20% of that population is monastic, by which I mean they're actually in a monastic setting doing a monastic practice. The rest of us are lay, pretty much, in the sense that we're living in the world. And we're in the world with cars, and the muni, and relationships, and houses, and movies, and bars, and terrorism, and social unrest, and the generosity of millions, the millions who responded to the need of the World Trade Center. It's a very wide world, lots of distractions. And it's such a beautiful world in its physical sense. We kind of like it. We like it so much that we choose it unconsciously. So what I was saying, I was used to meditating, but I was still resisting a little bit because it's hard work, meditating. And it happened regularly that I would go someplace like Tassajara or Green Gulch or City Center. And the weather before the retreat I was going to do would be really nasty. It would be dark and foggy or rainy or something like that. And then the first day of sesshin, wow, it would change. And it would be gorgeous outside. Blue, warm, everything. And I would think, here I am, facing this wall, and it's nice outside. And why does this always happen? This is pretty interesting. And you know what we call this? We call it preference. The preference is you'd rather be outside, you'd rather have the sunny weather. We always rather be in a place where it's nice. Hardly anybody wants to be in a place where it's dank and foggy and rainy and, not so good, whether it's outside or inside. We choose this thing. We like the good weather. We don't like the rain so much. And in San Francisco, we can like the snow from afar, but I hear that if you live with snow for 5 months, you get kind of impatient with it eventually. Maybe those of you who come from farther north or the Middle West have a pretty good idea of that, or New York. We have this strange climate here in San Francisco. Anyway, we choose the thing that we think will make us comfortable. We always do that. And this tendency of the mind to choose unconsciously is really what I want to talk about. How do we recognize it? And what can we do about it in our immersed in the world lives? Because that's where we are. What does it mean to someone who's decided that Buddhism is the spiritual path for practice? Now, monastics live a life which is pretty pared down. It's structured, and all the activities are Dharma related one way or the other. So there are pretty constant reminders to watch the mind. And it's not just the zendo. It's not just the services. It's the toilet. It's your clothes, your food, your reading material. Everything points towards wake up. All of this makes practice the main object of attention, well, most of the time. The surroundings support your intention in the monastery. But what if you're not there? What if you're not there? What if you're in the world and you're just going along with what we call our causes and conditions, which are the karmic effects that bring us into this world and make us what we are now? Maybe Dharma is not especially on your mind, but you have these things, and suddenly they provide an occasion, and it occurs to you, I have suffering. Some internal switch gets flipped over, and you unexpectedly see that some gesture, some word, something you've done is really your own suffering. It's not anybody else's. It's yours. And when I say see it, I don't mean that you feel pain. Pain is part of having a body. I mean, it's clear to you that your actions, your own actions, whether mental or physical, have had an unskillful result. And you accept responsibility for it, pretty unwillingly sometimes. But it's really clear to you that what you've done has come out of who you are. And I think of this as the oh shit moment of recognition. You know, when airplane crashes, the FAA also always wants to get the black box back. You know about the black box. Of course you know about the black box. How could you not know about the black box? And, well, on the black box, and sometimes the tower hears this just before everything cuts off, the last words that they most frequently hear are, oh shit. And, you know, I don't expect they're said angrily. I don't think so. I think they're said with this kind of despairing acceptance. Like, this thing is going to happen, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. Not one thing. And this is how you feel when you all of a sudden you click to what's happening in a Buddhistic sense, which means you get it, that you're responsible for what you've done. That's your recognition of I, the ego. And you feel bad. It hurts some particular place of spiritual awareness when you really get it, that you've done something that's come from you. Many people come to the path as though it's a mother. They want to be soothed. They want to be taken care of. They want the pain to go away. They expect something to happen to them rather than making something happen. And even though in Buddha we don't think about God, it's kind of like somewhere they think there's some spiritual thing that's going to make them feel better. And then they come to it and they hear, well, they're suffering. And then they also get, especially in my organization, they get all these forms of way you're supposed to do things, and they constantly get told they're doing things wrong. They don't like that. They're not quite sure how to do it. And they think, this is like adding insult to injury. I'm suffering and I have to do this too. And you're in pain on the cushion, and you're trying to count your breath, and your breath is totally not cooperating with this endeavor, right? And too much. It's too much. At least the ego is a familiar hell. It's a hell you know. But on second thought, we want to practice. There's something down there that draws us. Even though there's no end in sight, something pulls us. Well, we're not monastics. We don't have all that structure. We don't have all that stuff to help us along. So what's the simple practice? Doable by everybody here in the world. Well, the first part is you accept you can't say anymore, it's all your fault I feel like this. You can't say that to anyone. Maybe this is just an intellectual acknowledgement on your part, but it's a major step towards taking yourself on. And then we come to step 2, which is, and I do this right when I wake up, what's my state of mind? Or not even actually, it's better to be neutral. What's the state of mind? Now, I happen to be a person who often wakes up irritable at 4:30 a.m. And it doesn't have a lot to do with getting up early, because I've been doing this for years and I'm used to getting up at 4:30 a.m. You do get used to it, believe it or not. But often I wake up irritable. I curse the alarm clock, even though I'm awake before it goes off 98% of the time. I throw back the covers, I slam my feet into my slippers, and then I go in and I slam the toilet seat. And I just know that these things are making me mad, right? We all have this. Pretty interesting. Or I'm mad at something else that's making me mad, and I'm taking it out on them. And I know it, and it's okay. I don't care. And is this familiar to you? Has anybody ever done this? This is anger and blaming and lashing out, even at inanimate objects. Okay, so it is. And my other personal thing is traffic. Driving, actually. And I have to say, cars are a place where the ego shines. Right? So the 2 things that I do most are verbal judgments, by which I mean I say them out loud. And my underlying pretty smug feeling that I'm a better driver than whoever else happens to be driving this car that has cut in front of me or done some other driving thing. And lately this has struck me a lot. It struck me so much that I'm making it a personal practice, because I'm really being very self-indulgent in first judging other people, and secondly in having a lot of comparisons and making myself the better driver, which actually we call pride. It is pride. That's a very subtle devil, pride. So, these are 2 of the things I do, and this is why I'm trying to be aware of my state of mind. And so, let's go on a little further. And generally, you probably all have a place like this where it's really clear to you that you're having an unkind impulse. With me, it happens to be traffic, but I'm sure you recognize in yourself where that place is. Just recognize your mind state. If it's angry, vengeful, unhappy, those are pretty easy to recognize. That's one where you could say to yourself, do I want to indulge this or go there further? But don't forget that the blissful, happy mind states have perils too. Love can be a really slippery hill if you put your worth and happiness in someone else loving you. Then if it falls apart, it's way, way, way too easy to feel that you're worthless because the other person doesn't have the strong feelings for you that he once did. Notice in all of these states, almost every mind state, the mind goes out. We have been trained over and over again in this culture to go out, to look at the other person as being responsible for the state we feel, rather than acknowledging that what comes up from within us is basically us, not the other person. So we always go out, almost always. We do it consciously and we do it unconsciously. What's the state of mind? Keep the description of it as neutral as possible. Don't make it a way to attack or judge yourself. That doesn't work. Just stay neutral. Saying I or mine leads to a story, often. Maybe you don't want to go there because it actually reinforces the thoughts you're already having. And even in biochemical research in the brain, they've shown that in the brain, certain feelings and even certain patterns of thought become clearer and clearer over time as they keep doing, as people think them. They tend to run little grooves in the nervous system. It's pretty interesting. And we have a little groove of ego. We have a big groove of ego. We don't have a little groove of ego. From the minute we're born, actually, we have self, an idea of self. And I happen to be around a lot of babies now, ranging from maybe 6 months old up to about 3.5. And I see their selves becoming more and more defined as they get older. It's pretty interesting. So it starts very early. So neutral. It's irritable, it's unpleasant in there, irritable or unpleasant or harder. Oh, it's love in there. It's pleasant. And see how long you can hold awareness of this state and know that it's coming from within. From the way you look at things, not from without. And these are times to do this practice. I find it's really useful to tie it to a specific thing. So I wrote some down. When you wake up, actually just lie there in bed and think, what is it now? When you sit on your sofa, when you meditate, first thing you can ask yourself is, what's my state of mind? In the bathroom at work. Because when you're at work, you're distracted by what you're doing. But every time you go in the can, you have a minute to be by yourself, and you can think, what's my state of mind? Interesting, huh? At the red light, stop. What's in there? As you come in the door from work, open the door and walk into the room. Walk into your house. What's the mind state? Are you looking to pick a fight because of a bad day? Are you relieved because you're finally home? What do you anticipate? Do you feel neutral? Just coming home? As you turn off the light before you go to sleep, just lie there. What's your mind state? You will resist this knowledge. You don't want to be responsible. Really don't. But we are. We are. Recognize your resistance. It freezes you in place. In fact, a lot of practice is just recognizing your resistance on deeper and deeper and deeper levels. Feeling the I, holding on, holding on, holding on, holding on, right down to the depths of your gut, till it's completely revealed and transparent. So over and over and over again, there's a level. There's an I don't wanna. And then there's the other voice which says, oh, it's okay. You don't have to do that. I do that too. And then you think you're off the hook. But no. No. We're very self-indulgent. Very self-indulgent. And now that the mind state is identified, naturally you think, well, now what? What to do? Which is another kind of trap of the ego. The ego always thinks that there's an out. If you do something, it will go away. But in fact, there's not. So don't do anything. And you can check this out. You can try and make your feelings and thoughts go away. And I'm sure lots of you have tried that, especially in the difficult times in your life. You didn't want to be there, and you didn't want to have the thoughts or feelings you were having, especially if they were unpleasant. And it didn't happen. You couldn't make them go away. And if anybody has managed to do that, I'd really like to know about it. So I personally have never been successful in that. They're part of the body system, actually. It's all hardwired in there. It's with you until you die. And, a very interesting thing, I went to my masseuse yesterday and I said, I have this fantasy because it's been a really hard week and my shoulders are like bars. So she's working away and saying, "Bye, this is really a lump here." I said, yes. My fantasy is that when I die, my body will totally relax. And I won't be there to know it. What a shame, what a pity to miss this exquisite moment of relaxation. And she said to me, "You know what?" She's learning craniosacral massage, and she said, "Do you know we do craniosacral massage on people who died?" I said, "What?" She said, "Yep." And I said, how does this work? They can't be maybe too long dead. She said, "No, actually, it's within a week after you die." She said, as you work on them, the muscles actually change in these people who are dead. Is this an amazing thing? She said it's like the patterns remain in the body, but whatever has gone on has gone on. It's not there to maintain the patterns anymore, right? Yeah. And so when you work on the cranium, you can see the fascia change because nothing's in there to think, I'm mad or whatever, or to hold on to these physical patterns which we maintain in our body all the time without even thinking about it. And so on this dead person, actually the muscles change. And the face relaxes in some different way. And the skull, of course, in craniosacral, you're working on the skull. The skull changes. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? Pretty interesting. So, I think in life, you are what you are. Maybe somebody will work on you after you die and that pattern will change, but you won't be there to know about it. And I think lay practice is so great because there's so many opportunities to see and feel the sense of self. It's in your face all the time. And see how we make ourselves up. You won't get quite the same thing in the monastery. It's different. But out here, it can be in our face all the time. So back to the mind state. Don't do anything. Regard it with kindness. Buddha's especial kindness is compassion, which is loving and non-judgmental acceptance. This is relaxation, actually, relaxation. So identify, accept, and then observe inside as you might observe something you love very much and you desire well-being for. Sometimes it's kind of hard to do that. Love yourself. This something is having a dream of self. Treat it gently, because the dream of self is a suffering dream. If, when you wake up in the morning, you remind yourself to look in there, and you see what's going on, and you know it for what it is, then you've worked with steps 1 and 2. Often resistance arises about knowing or doing anything. Well, you will suffer with your inner states until you take them on. Suffering's going to go on. You might just stay with awareness of states for a while before deciding to do the work. And in terms of coming to that place, for me, it's because I recognize some dissonance between my intent and my actual actions when I'm driving around cussing out someone in the next lane. I knew I was doing this for a long, long time before I took it on. Really, I've been doing it for most of my adult life. And it's only recently that it occurred to me, believe it or not, that maybe what I was doing was not exactly in line with what my expressed intent was, which was to be aware of my mind states and see how they came up and how I indulged them. And how that affected me, how that made a groove, how I would just do it very unconsciously all the time, without saying, stop, don't go there, you don't need to go there. So I want to encourage you to trust your inner timing around this. It's okay to be where you are and actually ask for help. Recognize your unwillingness, and then see how your mind states affect your life, like runaway trains, which is actually what they do. And then when you know in your gut it's time to do something, begin to practice awareness and kindness. And I have a visualization for you. So I don't often offer these, but this came up for me, so I thought it was interesting. You sit down for a minute, anywhere will do, and see if you, again, identify and recognize what's going on, and then surround it with the sky. The biggest sky you can see. Choose a sky which relaxes you. Sunrise, sunset, big white clouds drifting around in the blue sky. Know that the sky is acceptance and compassion. And then just breathe and observe. Just breathe and observe and see what happens to your mind. When I was writing this, I thought, well, I don't know if I can really recommend this unless I try it myself. So there was a morning I woke up feeling not so great. And I lay in bed and it was really clear to me that was going on. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try this myself because I know I'm irritable. I clearly identified this. So I lay there and I thought of the sky. Pretty interesting. Blue sky, clouds, sunrise, sunset. And I visualized this for a while. And then it changed, actually, into a much more spacious place in which the irritation just kind of went away after a while. That was pretty interesting for me because I thought about it as being really a sort of portable thing that I could recommend to you all. And I see that this too changes, and it changes into something even larger. Is a place to go. After you take on this practice for a while, you might and you probably will find that life is a little simpler. The elements of self, what we think about as the elements of self, all these states, you know them, and you're not so trapped by them and by your resistance. You might wonder what this has to do with Zen, since that's what I happen to come from. Well, at its most simple, basic place. Soto Zen is just about attention in the present moment, never saying no, and compassion. We begin with attention, we progress to compassion, and then because of compassion, we never say no. This doesn't mean we don't exercise judgment. It does mean that we don't ignore suffering. And we specifically define suffering as having ego, as the ego itself. A dream of self. Everyone starts out there. And once seen, it's impossible to ignore how much everyone else is suffering too. At this point, rather than being resentment, which we so often are, resentment is seen and seen and seen. Seeing observes changes. Changes means that nothing is permanent. Impermanence means that I, although sticky and sneaky and hard to root out, doesn't last. It's a temptation to push through into some blissful state, and it's been known to happen. Well, bliss changes. Think of your last blissful moment, and you'll recognize that bliss changes. But pushing, in this instance, just creates more tension. Therefore, relax. 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 Relax in the breath. Relax around your mind states. Check out everything in your body and mind and relax. And because you are conscious and intent, something, and we never say what in Buddhism, something comes to meet you. Just this, or okay, or Buddha nature. The true state of being. And if you're there practicing being aware in your bed, at the stoplight, at the door, in the bathroom, knowing your reactions just for what they are, you're there to meet it. To be it, actually. Whatever it is, not emptiness, but fullness. Words do not describe it, and the thinking mind does not apprehend it, but the heart knows its home. Lay practice is a wonderful life. You never think about yourselves as being called to the lay life, but you have been, just as surely as monastics are called to the monastery. Don't be fooled by numbers and comparisons. You've been called to wake up in the middle of the world, here, to bear testament that it can be done, and to manifest what we can't name or describe, that which is wholeness of being. Friends, Buddha said, all dharmas are empty of self. May it be so for you and all of us. Thank you for your effort and your practice. I'm open to questions, and the other thing you have to know about this particular Buddhist practitioner is she's hard of hearing. So if I keep saying what, that's why. Yes?
My ongoing struggle to comprehend what Buddhist terms about self and ego and me. What, from a Buddhist point of view, am I speaking out loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you consider the identity that you perceive in someone else, that you see in a little child and you see it throughout their whole life? Just the there-ness of the person. It seems extremely unique and specific.
Right. Okay, let's see if what we think about as identity, what we see in people as different, what makes people different, is what Buddhistically we think about as their causes and conditions that come into this life when they're born. And causes and conditions are not reincarnation. Buddhism does not actually believe in reincarnation. Hinduism does. Reincarnation is a self which is passed along from life to life. In Buddhism, what we believe is it's the result of actions which are passed along. And that's why I talked about accepting responsibility, because actually you're responsible for everything you do, especially if you do it consciously. If you are consciously intent on hurting somebody, then you've left a karmic mark. And so all of your good actions and your unskillful actions come together at the moment of your birth to produce this particular entity, which I call Kathleen. Also, Kathleen, and there may be some things in Kathleen's life are the result of karmic fruit. For instance, my foot got run over. This was pretty interesting. I didn't think it was going to be a big deal, but it has been. It's really kept me from walking, and it's painful. Almost pretty much everybody has something happen which is a karmic fruit. Sometimes there's this thing we call instant karma, which is you do it and you get the fruit right away. And sometimes there's karmic fruits that just go on for a while because it takes you a while to figure out, spiritually what's happening, and to say, I don't want to do this thing anymore, because clearly it's going to bear fruit. This is usually the classic explanation of how is it the good guys always do well. Well, ultimately the good guys will be in the place where they don't do well. They'll reap their, the consequences of what they did. So that's how we conventionally say people are born into the world and they have different states. Someone like the Dalai Lama, for instance, clearly has, as a result of many lifetimes of working on the Dharma, has developed a state in which he comes back and is a very high-level practitioner. Lots of us are just starting out. We're just kind of getting the idea that it can be done. But even to have that little seed has an effect on our lives. You don't always come back as a human. Sometimes you go to a hell realm. We have hell in Buddhism. We have animal lives in Buddhism. We also have God lives in Buddhism. Being a God is very seductive, because you think, A, you're going to live forever, and B, it's a very nice place to be, But no, gods die in Buddhism, just like everything else does. So, that's a very brief explanation of how it is we all come up differently. Yes?
I don't know if this is so much a question as an observation. What I have noticed in relation to choice, in regards to taking responsibility, is that as I continue my practice, there are those oh shit moments of recognition. And what I find often is grief.
Is grief?
Grief. Grief about the recognition that, I've had the power to make this decision for all these years. And I never could see it. And so I think that to me is the most difficult part of the practice, is confronting regret.
Yeah, I do too. I think there's always some, yes, and it has to do with a softening that's going on in your heart, a recognition that you have caused pain, and that in itself makes you much less willing to do it again. Yes. And you do grieve. You grieve for the pain that you caused, and in a way, for the results that you will later deal with. Yeah, it's true. It's a big part of recognition. Yes.
Snake. I'm confused about what the various aspects of having a preference are. I realize that it's not synonymous with addiction, and you're enjoined always to have no preference. And it seems to me that many times you'd be like immobilized if you didn't have a preference, you know. If you're buying a shirt, there's a green shirt and a blue shirt. There doesn't seem to be any moral implications of choosing the blue one because you like blue or something. Are there other things that are associated with preference that make it wrong or unskillful?
Preference is always associated with ego. To actually have a preference, to be one way or the other, is associated with ego. Part of the purpose of the precepts and the vows is to help us look at our preferences and to have a place where we recognize that maybe this particular preference is not going to lead us exactly where we want to go. As people develop more and more and more in letting go of preference, they don't come to some place of just, blahness, which is maybe what it sounds like. They come to a place of openness, actually, is what happens. Because preference is a weight. Every time you think, I have to make this decision, it's a weight. It's not like saying, I'd rather have chocolate or vanilla. It's more along the lines of, just as I said, I don't really want to be here. I want to be out in the sunny weather, which is also saying, being out in the sunny weather is maybe more important than sitting here in the zendo, or why do I have to do this thing? I mean, if you look at what seems to be something pretty simple, often you'll find it's got really deep roots of ego down there. So that's why it's important to recognize preference, and that's why I talked about it that way. If I just said to myself, sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's foggy, it's okay. Whatever it is, it's okay. It would have been a much wider range for me, and much less weight for me to carry around in terms of thinking, and I don't want to be here. I want to be out there. Why does this always happen to me? Because often that's where it goes when you get into that. That's been my experience. So, open. It's just very open without preference. One of the most important things in my practice, interestingly enough, if you've ever gone and do sittings or you've done a one-day sitting, was to take off my watch and just go when the bell rang. Without having a preference about whether I should be there or not, just go when the bell rang. And there's lots of ways you can sort of work on yourself.
Things that are associated preference rather than just the idea that it could be extremely simple and not have any moral implications.
Preference to me is different than making a considered decision. Okay, there's the difference. Preference is most often around where feelings come up, or not wanting to do this, or some definite sense of aversion to what's going on. Then you have preference.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's clear.
Yeah.
I'm realizing
Well, okay. I know it's just that time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any announcements today before we end? Yeah. Okay. Well, there's some goodies out there if you prefer. Have them.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.